GetCrack. Wake up, motherfucker.
Yo, what's up? It is February 28th, 2026. All right, I think you've already heard about the war going on right now. So let's see what's going to happen Sunday night into Monday morning. Oil should do okay, I guess. But there's no guarantee, right? It really depends on like the response China will make. Right now, Russia's pretty much backed off even before this whole thing started, so Russia's out of the game. Don't know what China will say. Probably nothing. The only thing left for the Iranians to do is try to block the Strait of Hormuz, but that's kind of hard to do, right? I mean, look at how many ships the U.S. put around there. I think that's pretty damn hard for them to successfully try to block everything. Uh, and also, like, I don't know who's dead, really, right? We only know right now it was the Iranians just confirmed that Khomeini is dead, so the supreme leader is dead. I don't know about the president. President seems to be missing, so either injured or dead. Vice president's supposed to take over. I think there's just a lot of question marks right now. So there's plenty of ships. Okay, yeah, block that horn over there, right? Block that rhinoceros horn. Good luck with that. I have my doubts, but I'm a true believer. It has nothing to do with this. The long-term goal of oil, you don't want to buy because of events like this. These things come and go, right? These things come and go, but there's structural effects that will be longer lasting. One structural effect is will um will China's domestic consumption come back? Because a lot of people have said there is peak oil. And I can show you right here. Let's see. So this is the bearish, take on it. Bitcoin's kind of been doing pretty nicely as a trade. So if you've been trading Bitcoin from the morning all the way back up here, yeah, that's fine and dandy. But I want to see like if there's a bigger change in how things are going to move up. So let's go look at the bearish. Let me play thing. Slowing oil demand growth is likely to persist. Okay, this was in 2024. So China's demand for oil, along an important driver of global oil demand growth, slowed dramatically during January to September 2024. Between 2000 and 2023, China accounted for 50% of the growth in world oil demand. So a lot of the oil issues, for if you're bullish on oil, has been China. China's been so weak at recovering since COVID-19 lockdowns, and they've been purposely trying to stop growth in tech and a lot of other things too, because they don't want those tech companies getting too powerful. So that's another thing stopping domestic consumption. The other thing too is they try really hard to get everyone to go use EV vehicles and all that. That's really the main reason China's a big driver of it, because a lot of energy comes from oil and coal. So coal is a big problem that they have also. They're probably the only major consumer of coal at this point, outside of some smaller third world countries, but they make the majority bulk of coal consumption. Oil consumption typically is going to be relegated to like shipping, right? So putting crude and turning it into products, as well as energy for vehicles, shipping and all that. Okay, averaging an annual increase of 518,000 barrels per day. However, analysts expect China's oil demand will increase by far less in 2024. The International Energy Agency now projects that the country's oil demand will grow by 180,000 barrels per day this year, down from 410 barrels per day it projected in July. Okay, so this is the bearish case, right? And we can go down here and you look at like, oh shit, China's not going to consume that much oil. And this was the estimated back then peak in how much they were consuming diesel and gasoline. So these are the estimates from different people. So some people are like, oh, diesel will be peaking around now. So most of the years you see here should be done, right? Gasoline should have already peaked. So there should be no more oil consumption growth from now on from China. It will stay this way or going down. Okay, but here's the question for you guys. What if there's a war? When you have a war, you want energy, right? I don't know how China's nuclear program is going for ships. So are a lot of their aircraft carriers they're planning to build, are they going to be really nuclear or not? That's a question. What about their support ships? I know they're probably not going to be nuclear powered. How about the submarines? I think Chinese submarines are still largely diesel driven, right? So that's the problem. That's the question. So what have the Chinese been doing? They've been doing a lot of hoarding of oil, So let's see some of these other articles here. China's crude hoarding. So this was just like a month ago. It's propping up oil prices. China underpinned oil prices in 2025 by aggressively stockpiling crude. Why would they do that? They've been doing with silver, nickel, gold. They've been hoarding a lot of commodities so far while they were cheap, right? Copper. So this is the difference here. So even if they don't consume today, they're planning on consuming a lot of it later for some reason, right? Some reason. Cost. Taiwan! Anyway, yeah. So, we could just read all this crap but it's like China's stockpiling hit multi-year high in December. In December 2025, China is estimated to have amassed the highest crude volumes in 1 month since June of 2020, when the COVID pandemic and the resulting lockdowns hit oil demand and crashed prices. So they bought low, right? It was cheap. Time to buy. Unlike the United States, China does not report inventories. Analysts are looking at overall supply, domestic production plus imports, and refinery processing rates to estimate how much crude is going into strategic or commercial reserves and how much is being processed into fuels. The difference between total supply and refining throughput is generally considered to have gone into storage. This figure soared to a 2.67 million barrels per day stockpiling rate in December compared to 1.88 million barrels per day in November, according to official data crunched by Reuters columnist Clyde Russell. December was the culmination of a trend that started in March and April of 2025 when China accelerated crude stockpiling. Well, I guess that was because of all the tariff stuff, right? I mean, they've pretty much given up on trying to influence American politics. I think they pretty much set on the path that, yeah, the U.S. is going to fight us one day, and that's it. We better stock up here. So, yeah, I think we're going to head to that point in about 5 years or so. Crude oil imports into China last year hit the highest ever, reaching 11.55 million barrels per day, up by 4.4% compared to 2024, official Chinese data showed earlier this month. The December total was also a record high at an average of 13.18 million barrels per day. Since April 2025, China's crude stockpiling has supported international oil prices into the $60 and $70 barrel range, despite trade wars, concerns about the economy, and soaring supply from both OPEC Plus and non-OPEC Plus exporters. So, you see, this is pretty much why oil hasn't been, quote unquote, crashing like a lot of people have been claiming the past 2 years. They're just consuming whatever they can at whatever price they can. All right. And we've just taken out Iran, Venezuela. So only Russia is left for China, because those three countries have been having sanctions, right? And only China and India are the ones that actually are consuming that, quote unquote, bad oil, like the oil that's not supposed to be bought, right, on the market. So they open these teapot refineries to take in all that illegal oil, all right, from these people, and they've engineered all their refiners to process that type of oil. Russian oil, Iranian oil, and Venezuelan oil are unique, okay? So a lot of the oil we consume is generally like processed from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, which have different types of oil, okay? So all the crude is not equal. So one barrel of oil from one place is not the same chemical composition as another. That's why you hear people talk about sweet crude. I don't know why they call it sweet. Does it taste sweet? I don't know. I never tasted oil before. And other things like that on nature. I'm not an oil guy, so you gotta talk to someone else. But that's the main reason. So okay, let me ask Grok something here. So I asked Grok a few questions. Let's see what the AI says. Okay, Grok, what percentage of China's oil comes from Venezuela and Iran, and what are the impacts on China's GDP growth if China doesn't get Venezuelan and Iranian oil? So Grok said this: based on recent data from 2025, the latest comprehensive year available, China's seaborne crude oil imports averaged around 10.27 million barrels per day. Of this, imports from Iran averaged approximately 1.38 million barrels per day, accounting for about 13.4% of the total. Imports from Venezuela averaged around 389,000 barrels per day, roughly 3.8% of the total. Combined, these two sources represent approximately 17% of China's seaborne crude imports, though estimates vary slightly depending on tracking methods due to sanctions evasion via ship-to-ship transfers and relabeling. If supplies from Venezuela and Iran are completely cut off, the direct impact on China's GDP growth would likely be limited but not negligible, primarily manifesting as higher energy costs rather than a full-blown supply crisis. China maintains substantial strategic oil reserves, estimated to cover 200 days of net imports at partial capacity, which could buffer short-term disruptions for several months without major economic fallout. The country has a diversified suppliers, blah, 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 and it could redirect demand to these sources or ramp up domestic production, which already stands at around 4.3 million barrels per day. However, the loss would eliminate access to heavily discounted barrels, typically $8 to $10 cheaper per barrel due to sanctions, potentially costing China billions annually in foregone savings, roughly 4 to 5 billion from Iranian oil alone based on average volumes and discounts. This could raise refinery margins, contribute to modest inflation, 0.1 to 0.5%, depending on global oil price responses, and slightly drag GDP growth by 0.2 to 0.5% in a prolonged scenario, especially for independent teapot refiners in Shandong province that rely on these grades. That's what grades, I talked about the sweet, that's what you gotta look for, the grades, for 20 to 25% of their feedstock. Longer term, reduced diversification might increase vulnerability to price volatility from remaining suppliers like Russia, but ongoing shifts towards electric vehicles and renewables would help mitigate broader energy dependency risks. Overall, this would represent marginal cost increase rather than a systemic shock, with GDP growth potentially dipping temporarily but recovering through substitutions and stockpiles. Now, here's a question. How much of this inflation we're talking about, modest inflation, how much does that really affect the Chinese domestic economy, right? Like, there's a lot of unemployment in China right now, youth unemployment. They have a growing middle class. Okay, so now that all this cheap oil that they got is gone, then how much of that inflation will start really traversing around the economy? They can last 200 days, apparently. So if this thing lasts longer than 200 days, what will happen? So I said break down GDP impact scenarios, short-term disruption scenario, 0 to 6 months. So I told them this. Okay, what do you get here? So 0.1%, we know that. What about if it's 6 to 24 months of disruption? So let's see here. Supply substitution, increased reliance on higher price alternatives, Canadian or Iraq, heavy crude, potentially raising average import costs by 3 to 5 per barrel overall. This might compress discounts and increase transaction risks like higher freight and insurance. Oh, okay. So not only that, it goes through the insurance. So shipping costs will go up. Okay, so boats will have to be insured at higher prices. Inflation could rise 0.1 to 0.5 with GDP growth drag of 0.2 to 0.5%, particularly in energy-intensive sectors like manufacturing and chemicals. Okay, so now this doesn't take into account like Russia, right? What if Russia starts getting pressured now? Let's see what happens. So if we start going around the globe, like we started attacking tankers, so the Navy went around and started like seizing a bunch of tankers from Venezuela. What if we just start getting more aggressive and go around the damn globe and start seizing Russian tankers and all this stuff? So after Iran is done with, then the eye of Sauron is going around and looking for other places to attack, right? So what I'm thinking is that all we're doing is we're trying to knock off places of support for China, right? China is building. It's building for war. So you start attacking them at certain weak spots, and then you keep attacking them. I mean, this is it. This is pretty much it. You got to do it now. You know, if you're not going to directly attack China, you're going to have to keep hammering away at their cheap sources of energy and then stop them from like taking all the resources off of Africa, because Africa has a ton of minerals there that the Chinese have quite cultivated a lot of relationships in Africa. Africa will be the flashpoint next. So there's going to be war in the Congo and Rwanda again, I'm guessing. Anything else? There was a lot of gold being taken from Darfur and Sudan by the UAE recently too, so that might be an issue. Oh, there's a lot of places, man, that you're going to go around. Definitely Nigeria and the Central African Republic, Mali. Yeah, all those places have oil in there too. So there you go. Awesome music. I thought it was funny how you raged at Jeremy King. Hey, I've done that before. I like spurging out from time to time. It's entertaining to me anyhow. Like how Deadman thought it was funny too. Man, I've been angry so many times before. You know, it's just not often. I've yelled at lasagna on this channel, on the Urban Landlord. I mean, you're not on the Urban Landlord, but yeah, on this channel, there was panels. I would just yell at people. Let's see, who else? I did it with Hormaxer. That one's on like, the Hormaxer one is on Joe Shabatoni's. Maybe I'll play it one day again, if you guys never heard that one. What other times I've spurged out? It's all performative. I just like it, you know. I go deep into my rage point and just pull it out just for effect. Yeah, but yeah, generally I'm not angry. So I don't think I've ever really been angry, except maybe a couple times in real life. And even then, I was kind of half joking. I wasn't really serious. Long-term adaptation scenario. In a permanent or extended loss of these supplies, assuming no reversal of geopolitical shifts, China would likely adapt through structural changes. Okay, this is getting more serious. 2 years, right? Ramp up domestic production, currently 4.3 million barrels per day, and imports from stable sources, Brazil, Middle East. Shift towards renewable and electrical vehicles could reduce oil dependency by 10 to 20% over time. Initial GDP drag of 0.3 to 0.7. So this is getting worse now in the first 1 to 2 years. Okay. Let's see. Medium to low probability, as full cutoffs are rare, but adaptation is feasible given China's energy security. Okay. Or whatever. Security strategies. All right. Let's switch it up, the music. Okay. Yeah, what's up, Jewel? Did you already talk about how to take our takedown of Iran affects things? Yeah, I'm just talking about it now. I came on like on Latino's panel at the beginning to talk a little bit about this, but yeah, not too much. I mean, this was basically what I said on there, but this is more in more detail. If the cutoff escalates in a broader conflict, okay, Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz. So we have to watch this. So I have no idea if they are really capable of shutting it down, okay? But if they shut it down, that means Kuwait, Bahrain, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, they can't ship out their oil. Saudi Arabia has some pipelines they can go through Jordan and Israel to get out that way. Iraq has some that can go through Jordan, Israel, go that way. But for the most part, yeah, most of the oil is shipped through sea. So it's going to be really annoying if they use pipelines, right? Because if they go through the pipelines, they got to share it with other people, and then they all got to go through shipping in Israel. And Israel will benefit a lot. I'm sure Israel will be happy. Oh, yeah, you want to use the pipelines that go to our ports, and then all the tankers have to fill up on your oil at our ports? Yeah, you're gonna get charged a fee, right? You're gonna get charged a fee for that. So you're gonna use our ports and our pipelines. Yep, here you go. Ka-ching, ka-ching. So that's definitely, they're happy with that. If they shut it down, I don't know if they can though. That's going to disrupt 20% of the world's oil, right? Sit right here. So 20% of the world's oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, so that's not good. Severe shortages possible with global prices spiking to $100. That'll be great for me because I told you guys to buy oil U for the past month. You bought oil U. If all of a sudden oil just shoots up to $100 to my target for oil eventually is 160, 180 over the next several years. So if it shoots up right now, like on Monday, it goes up to 80, and then all of a sudden they really do shut down the strait. I doubt it. I really doubt it. I doubt they can, but you know, who knows if they got enough drones and stuff to cause an issue. Like they can definitely like be a headache. You know, they could just go around and start seizing ships or pirating it. They'll just be like a worse version of the Somali pirates, you know. But I don't think the U.S. would stand for that. Like, this U.S. is just really gonna let them do that, or they're just gonna go around the damn Persian Gulf and just start shooting at everyone. It's gonna be crazy. That's for sure. If they really have the balls to do this, they need Chinese help for sure. I mean, if Russia really isn't gonna help them out, they need the Chinese to go over there and start helping them out with tech. Okay, they definitely need the advantage there. Without sophisticated radars and all that type of jazz, it's going to be a problem. Severe shortages possible with global prices spiking to $100 plus a barrel. China's reserve might cover 3 to 6 months, but prolonged disruption would strain substitution. Sharp inflation, 1 to 3%, supply chain breakdowns, and GDP contraction of 1 to 2%. Or more in the first year, with ripple effects on manufacturing, exports, and global trade. China's economy, as the world's largest oil importer, would be hit harder than the U.S., potentially exacerbating trade tensions. Oh, well. So, yeah, I mean, maybe we'll let them. You know what? It'll be funny. The U.S. just lets them be pirates. Yeah, just let them be pirates because it hurts them more than it hurts us. That would be crazy. Right? I mean, Iran would basically have to try to identify which ships are going to China, which ships are not. Like, they would have to board every ship, or they have to get very good intelligence reports of like which ships are going to the right places. Because if they selectively shut it down, that's a hard job to do. I think the United States will definitely, if they allow Iran to be pirates, they would just try to like make it hard for them to figure out which of these ships will go to China eventually, because they jump ship. They go from ship to ship. They'll just transfer oil from ship to ship in the Indian Ocean. So they would have to know like, oh, this ship eventually has oil that will get to China, and they'll let them pass. And then this ship won't, right? So I think this is the game that we're playing. And the only reason the United States is doing this right now is because they have a lot of intelligence than ever before. Because they give all you guys the cell phones, right? The cell phones are spying on you. I think they've been planning this game for a long time, trying to get as much sophistication using Palantir. That's why I told you to buy Palantir stock, right, in 2025. or 2024, right? 2024. And companies like that, Peter Thiel, all his companies, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Let me see how much time I got. I don't know. Let me see if I have enough time. But if you see the scenarios here, it's like you can take a screenshot of this. Okay, so let me switch to the Palantir stuff. Peter Thiel. Okay, so here's some funny things, right? If you just look up the companies that are named after Lord of the Rings references, then you'll know what's up. Palmer Luckey, interesting name, named his latest company Erebor, a reference to Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings. Here are the other tech companies inspired by the fantasy series. Lord of the Rings, to those in the know, isn't just standard reading among those in the tech industry. It also inspires their ventures. Billionaire PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel, for instance, has started several companies inspired by the J.R.R. Tolkien series. The fantasy trilogy, a sequel to the 1937's Hobbit, was first published in the mid-1950s. It follows an unlikely hero, Frodo Baggins, as he and a team of allies adventure across Middle-earth to destroy a powerful ring that could bring darkness to the world if it fell into the hands of Sauron, the Dark Lord. All right. Yeah. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. The Lord of the Rings represents a group of people going out and doing something extraordinary. Quinn Riley, a longtime fan who helped organize the Salesforce Tower lighting. So, I guess if you didn't know, that this is the latest skyscraper they built, the Salesforce Tower. I guess they put an Eye of Sauron on top of it for a little while. They have a LCD display, some kind of thing going on up there. You can see. A longtime fan who helped organize the Salesforce Tower lighting previously told Business Insider that's not unlike the mission that most startups set out to go on. Here is an ongoing list of Silicon Valley's top Lord of the Rings inspired companies. Erebor. Okay. So this Palmer Luckey's guy's name here, interesting. New digital bank for startups and cryptocurrencies. Okay, so that's Erebor. Let's see, Anduril. I think you probably know this one. So he made another venture. This one makes the drones. Okay, they have a bunch of factories being built right now in Ohio. So if you guys were wondering why Ohio was so important during the elections with the whole thing about Haitians and this and that, they do have a lot of factories built there. Intel too, and other tech companies want to build a lot of factories there. So that's one reason. You need a lot of slave force to assemble most of these things. So they do drones, military drones, honestly. So this was founded in 2017, is named after the legendary sword used by Aragorn, a hero in the Lord of the Rings story. Anduril means Flame of the West. The company has been at the forefront of AI-powered innovations in warfare, from drones to autonomous weapons systems. Palantir, we know this one, okay, is a government-focused software giant led by Alex Karp. It takes its name from the mystical all-power Seeing Stone. Yes, so these are not, named randomly, okay? Palantir, if you know the story, was what people, the Numenor, like whatever, those humans that have long life, blah blah blah, and they got these stones and they used it to do long distance communication, and then Sauron got control of them, and now Sauron is using them to spy on people and manipulate people and do psyops on them. Yeah, that's what they're doing. That's what Palantir is all about. And I think they've proven themselves already with how easy they took out Maduro in Venezuela. And they're going to keep using this to take out more things. And we see how easy it was for them to figure out where Khomeini was around and blow up his whole and flatten his whole building, killing most of his family, I think. I think they've already reported that a lot of his family are dead now. They took out the whole damn place. Mithril Capital. Okay, so Theo launched Mithril Capital in 2012 to invest in late-stage startups. The firm, which counts Vice President J.D. Vance among its alumni, takes its name from a valuable and rare precious metal used to make armor and jewelry. Okay, it's a symbol of wealth and status. All right, so there's a bunch of these. Look, there's so many. There's so many now. These are not listed anywhere. Okay, they're all private still. So I don't know if you want to buy shares in Eye of Sauron. What the fuck, man? Sauron Systems, home security system that leverages AI, is named after Sauron. I don't know if Peter Thiel has anything to do with these, but who knows? Whatever. Could be. Could be. All right, another article. Peter Thiel's influence over a network of Lord of the Rings inspired companies. Let's see. Okay, this is the Salesforce Tower. There you go. The Eye of Sauron. Yep, it's looking at you. Okay, blah 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 blah. Yeah, maybe we'll. I think this is about the same. This is pretty much giving the same information. The links are in the description, so if you really care, Gnar Your Capital. Okay, isn't just a vehicle for financial influence, but also for Thiel to cultivate another acolyte to send into the world. The firm was co-founded by J.D. Vance in 2020 with $100 million from Thiel and his network to get it started. Thiel also funded Vance's 2022 Senate campaign to the tune of $15 million. Now that's paying off with the potential for Thiel to have a lot of influence in a future Trump administration if he wins in November. Yeah, he won in November. So that's where we're getting. This is where things are going. That's it. Yeah, so Mithril, Rivendell, god damn, Rivendell. Oh man. Okay. Yeah, what's this one? Athelas or Kingsfoil is a weed in middle. That has healing properties. Okay, what? So what does this one do? Oh, it's healthcare business. Oh, of course, yeah. Oh, another one, Iluvatar. Oh, great. What's this one do? Okay, Iluvatar is God in the Lord of the Rings universe. That's what God is. That's what God's called. Okay, it's a semiconductor. Okay, this one is not related to Thiel. Okay, whatever. Anyhow, all right, that's fun. That's fun, I think. Okay, anything else? Okay, going back to China here. Going back to China again. See what else we got? I used to drive by Salesforce 2 times a day. Oh man, that whole place is hilarious. Like that place is the whole area is hilarious. Salesforce. Oh my god, all of those. It's right by the Transbay terminal. They moved the Transbay terminal into the right next to the Salesforce building, and all those guys who have to get off from the AC Transit would they have to live in the East Bay. They have to get in through the bus, and they're going everywhere. But then after COVID, nobody goes around there anymore. So that's about it. Fun times. Okay, let's play. What's this? What's this one? One of the least talked about dynamics of the global crude oil market is the role China plays in setting a floor and ceiling for prices. I think we already talked about this. So let's see if there's anything new they want to talk about. The world's largest crude importer has quietly built a track record of buying excess oil. Yeah, we read about that. To build inventories when its refineries and governments deem prices to be cheap, and conversely pull back on imports when prices rise too high or too rapidly. Because the shifts in imports happen with a lag of several months, given the time between when a cargo is arranged and delivered, it is not immediately obvious to analysts and reporters covering the crude market. However, there are some early signs that China is shifting its imports to favor more competitively priced crude, while also trimming imports from April onwards. So when was this written? This was written like a couple days ago. Okay. This is likely being done as crude oil prices have risen sharply in recent weeks amid the uncertainty created by tensions between the United States and Iran, with concern that a U.S. military strike may result in Iranian retaliation against oil installations and tankers in the vital Persian Gulf area. Or maybe the Iranians will start doing pirating themselves, causing uncertainty. Yeah, everybody will pirate all across that Gulf, huh? Okay, global benchmark Brent crude futures hit the highest in nearly 7 months on February 23rd, reaching $72.5 a barrel. and have rallied 23% since the 7-month low of 58.72 on December 16th. The rise in Brent has made crudes that are priced against it more expensive on a relative basis, such as those from West African producers, Nigeria and Angola. In turn, this has led to producers offering bigger discounts in order to clear cargoes, with traders reporting that some West African grades are being sold at discounts of up to $5 a barrel over the dated Brent benchmark, up from $3 earlier this month. Oh, interesting. So the Africans have to lower their prices. Fascinating, man. That's why crude is so interesting, huh? Yeah. It's not like gold. A piece of gold is always a piece of gold. It's the same thing, right? It's just a shiny rock, but oil is way complex. It's like, oh, well, African oil, I have to refine it this way. Russian oil, I have to refine it another way. Venezuelan oil, you can't just like ship that same oil everywhere because the refineries can't handle it. They won't take it. And this causes issues, right? Some of them have to lower prices below what the benchmark is just to get it off the ship. China is often seen as a buyer of last resort for West African crudes, and the high discounts on offer shows that there is limited appetite for extra cargoes. Higher freight rates are also making it more expensive to land West African crudes in China, especially since Middle East producers have been lowering their prices in recent months. Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter, cut its official selling price for its main Arab light grade for Asian refiners for a fourth month for March loading cargoes. The March OSP for Arab light crude was set at parity with the Oman Dubai average, down from a premium of 0.3 cents. Okay, so 0.3 cents. Oh, wait, that's 30 cents. My bad. God damn, just put 30 cents with a cent symbol on it. Barrel in February, the lowest since December 2020, according to Reuters data. China has responded by selling more Saudi crude as well as other similar grades from Gulf producers. Buying more Saudi crude, my bad. Okay, so data from commodity analyst Kepler also show China is paring back on cargoes from Africa with arrivals in February and March below the level of the fourth quarter of last year. China's imports from Africa are forecast at 1.04 million barrels per day expected in March and 978,000 barrels per day in February, down from 1.25 million barrels per day in the fourth quarter of 2025, according to Kepler data. There is a large degree of fungibility between grades. Fungibility, that means like you can exchange one for another. Okay, such as Arab Light and Nigeria's Bonny Light and Angola's Cabinda, given similar API gravity and sulfur contents. Okay, that's what determines if something's sweet. If they got this, they're sweet. If they're not sweet. Okay, depending on how much sulfur is in there. Another grade that is similar is Russia's Urals, and China looks to be snapping up cargoes at heavy discounts after the other major Russian buyer, India, agreed with the United States as part of a trade deal to buy less of the sanctioned crude. See, the sanctions add another factor to this. So not only we have different types of oil to worry about, it's also like who's sanctioned, who's not sanctioned, how much trouble do I have to do to get around the sanctions? Do I have to hide all this oil in another tanker somewhere and then move that tanker and hide it from the US Navy? Like, yeah, it's wild. So yeah, if you go to the armed forces in America, it's basically Team America World Police for real. All you're doing is going around hunting for these rogue tankers and just bombing refiners or whoever. Shit, that's crazy. China's imports of Russian crude from Europe, which is where Urals loads, are expected to be 824,000 barrels per day in February, up from 741,000 barrels per day in January and 444,000 barrels per day in December. Overall, what appears to be happening is that China is buying up heavily discounted Russian crude and cutting back on more expensive Brent grade price grades, but it also may be trimming the overall volume it imports, given the recent rally in prices, just as it did during the 12-day conflict in June last year between Israel, supported by the United States, and Iran. Okay, so that gives you an idea. Now, since China is so dependent on this cheap oil, this is the problem, right? Too much going on on Ruby and Jeremy Ware on Jims, and Spud is watching. Man, they're going to Jims. Is Jims still streaming? I heard Gamer went on Jim's quote unquote belated birthday stream, you know? It's like, what do they talk on there? Dude, bro. If Jim's not drinking liquor, he's not gonna be entertaining. He's gonna be boring. Like, you gotta see his mom drive him to the liquor store again. That's funny shit. That's fun stuff. If Jim's sober, no, that's not interesting. China's cheap oil strategy is becoming a geopolitical liability. Okay. All right. Let's see what it says here. The U.S. government's removal of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro last month is upending broader geopolitics as we know it, informed by the second Trump administration's focus on the Western Hemisphere, codified in the November 2025 National Security Strategy, which calls for direct action against regimes Washington deems destabilizing or hostile to U.S. interests. The action signals that Venezuela's future will likely be closely tied to the whims of Washington, D.C. Okay? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, in China. Okay, let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So 80% of Venezuela's oil exports goes to China. All right. Let's see what else. Venezuela is not the only questionable China's crude. Over the years, Beijing quietly built an alternative supply system anchored in the political isolation of pariah states, including Iran and Russia. So after the invasion of Ukraine, Russian crude oil became China's largest single source of imports. Iranian oil, responsible for about 14% of China's crude oil imports, continues to slip through global sanctions enforcement, often relabeled and rebranded as Malaysian oil. So they just try to trick you and say it's Malaysian oil. All right, what's up, Pocket Aces? And Venezuelan oil found its way to Chinese ports by shadow tankers, sometimes labeled as crude oil from Brazil. So yeah, they've been playing this game for a while. Purchasing pariah state oil at discounted prices benefited China considerably, helping to fuel its industrial growth strategy. Yet with the removal of Maduro, this model now looks fragile. What began as a clever circumvention of Western sanctions is poised to become a liability for China, exposing the reality that regime risk, not supply scarcity, is now its primary energy vulnerability. Dum dum dum. Guess what? Now you took out Iran. Okay, what's left? Russia, right? Only Russia's left now. China is the world's second largest country by population, home to 300 million passenger cars and the world's second largest consumer of oil. In 2024, China imported about 11.1 million barrels of crude oil per day, while domestic production averaged about 4.3 million per day. China's domestic resources are thus not enough to cover the country's demand for crude oil, setting it up for a structural reliance on imported crude. This helps explain China's determined strategies to electrify transportation and other parts of the economy. Demand growth for crude slowed in 2024, driven by Chinese drivers switching to battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids, as well as a broader slowdown in the property sector related to decreased demand for diesel. The China National Petroleum Corporation, or Sinopec, two major Chinese state-owned oil and gas firms, have predicted that oil consumption for China will peak in 2025 to 2027. Okay, we read that, right? What's up, Crack? So they just put a different sticker on the barrel. Yep, that's right. That's what they've been doing for years now. Okay, so, but even so, China will, for the foreseeable future, be dependent upon imported crude oil to fulfill domestic consumption. China buys crude from dozens of countries, but imports are concentrated in a handful of major suppliers. In 2024, the largest sources cited in official data include Russia, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Oman, and quote-unquote Malaysia. Okay, this is misleading. China imported more oil from Malaysia in 2024 than Malaysia itself produces. Evidence of the country's role in transshipment. Okay, that's a different type of trans. And the relabeling of sanctioned barrels from Iran and Venezuela. Over 1 billion of Venezuelan crude has also arrived in China with fake certificates, rebranding the oil as from Brazil, indicating the extent of sanction invasions and China's willingness to take advantage of fake certificates to acquire discounted oil. China's taken full advantage of cheap oil available from pariah states. Okay, and blah blah blah. Let's see. For China, purchasing from these countries means access to discount oil. I think we talked about enough of this. Okay, so its flagship Mary heavy crude has now delivered with a discount of about 14 to 15 per barrel below Brent. So that's pretty good. Pretty good from Venezuela. That's gone now. For China, the strategy of purchasing discounted oil from even sanctioned states have led to several economic benefits. All right. Blah, blah, let's see. Yeah, we've read some of this. They can play one pariah state against the other. Yeah, good job. Good job. So this is the first fracture is Maduro. Okay. Most of Venezuela's heavy crude fed so-called teapot refineries, independent, non-state-owned refiners, mostly located in Shandong province. These smaller refineries, known as teapots, purchase crude oil at discounted prices as they are purchasing sanctioned goods. Teapot refineries typically operate on thin margins, lack long-term supply contracts, depend on spot cargoes, and provide fuel fare. That leaves them most exposed to sanctioned barrel volatility because their economics often depend on access to discounted oils. Teapots are critical to China's downstream economy, refining diesel for trucking firms, logistic companies, farmers, and construction, jet fuel for domestic aviation market, petrochemical feedstock for fertilizer, textiles, plastics, and lubricants, and fuel oil for infrastructure, shipping, and heavy industry. Oh boy. Oh boy. So if you take these guys out, the price of those sanctioned oils starts spiking, then all these refineries will just go bankrupt. And you just knocked out a ton of oh boy, yeah, that's good. Yeah, you just keep hitting Iran and Venezuela. Sure, okay. The Russia's next then. Russia's after they're done with Iran. Russia's next. When teapot refineries get hit by the loss of discount oil from Venezuela, the fallout will ripple into increased transportation costs and construction prices, and ultimately local employment. Ding, 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 ding. Yes, that's what I thought. So Grok doesn't know that part, right? Grok doesn't know that part. What is the economic downfall at the end of the tree here? So we got the root, we go all the way to the leaves. This is it. If unemployment starts spiking in China because of this, guess what that means? Regime change. Okay, I don't know. Well, China has a better lock on their populace than Iran for sure. They know how to control people in China a lot more effectively. But we'll see. We'll see. I think the United States will have to work very hard on trying to pick at China's economy here. You're going to probably have to make tariffs go up to 500% or just go around the damn oceans and start taking out like more of their connections in Africa and things like of that nature. So I'm thinking there's going to be more attacks coming soon. Yeah. All right. So anyhow, I think the rest of this is pretty much what we know now. Real stress test. Iran and Russia. Well, we got Iran. Russia's next. Policy implications for Beijing. The changing geopolitical environment is now impacting the energy calculus in Beijing. While there is plenty of oil supply in the world, Beijing's bet on instability and geopolitical pariah states is adding political risk to the supply calculus. The formerly shrewd exploitation of discounted crude oil now appears to be a strategic liability. Yeah, what can China do about it, huh? Let's see. In the short term, China needs to expand stockpiles and proactively work with vulnerable refineries. Okay. With ample supply from Gulf states available, as well as Brazil, it can reduce purchases, albeit at a higher cost. Medium term, China needs to dilute or end its dependence on discounted oil. Broader diversification. All right. Long term, China needs to continue its structural reduction of oil consumption. Well, that's going to take a lot longer. I think, they're probably going to have to go to nuclear. I know they've already built some thorium nuclear plants. Okay, so thorium is kind of like an old idea for making nuclear plants that they've started testing out in the deserts of China. So we'll see how that goes. If those go well, they'll probably do more and more nuclear. Although I don't know, a lot of the battery technology will have to be good to store all that energy. Okay, so there you go, guys. I think that's about it. I don't think I need to talk any more about that. Almost 1 hour. Good. So that's it. That's all I really need to talk about. Let's watch some videos here. Before I do, let's look at the... Before I forget, let's look at the chart so far. Let's see. Let's see what happens with Bitcoin. Man, Bitcoin's still goofing off. Oh my god. Okay, so this was the attack, right? You got this drop. It didn't go to 50K, so Bitcoin bulls should be happy with that. It just went a little bit below the pink zone, just like it did on Tuesday. It bounced back into the yellow, and now we've been doing the zigzag in the yellow area, right? It's like, oh, okay, so the U.S. attacked, but the retaliation was weak sauce, so everyone's getting happy. Khomeini died, and it's got confirmed, so then they're happy again. Now it's going back down. I don't know. It's really going to be dependent on if they can lock down the Hormuz, or China really gets tough and starts saying a lot, stop saying words and actually do something, realistic here, tangible, because talk is cheap. So I don't know what China's going to say. I don't know what Iran's going to say. The president is missing in action. What is the vice president going to say? Are they going to pick a new leader anytime soon for the supreme leader job? Don't know. All that is going to affect us into tomorrow. So that will be, you'll have to be watching this Sunday morning, okay? 6 p.m. Eastern is when the futures markets open. So watch this. Watch how crude works, how gold and silver behaves, copper. My guess is that you'll see a spike on everything, and then if nothing really happens by Monday morning, it will just go back down, and then the markets will try to recover into pre-market, okay? And then on Monday, during the open hours, you'll be like, oh, nothing happened, nothing burger, we got Khomeini, everything's cool, and then something's gonna happen on Tuesday. Why do I say that? Because that is the Jewish New Year, a holiday, okay, of what did I call it? Okay, Purim. So we got T-2 days, so 48 hours into the Jewish holiday of Purim. And if you don't know what that holiday is, let me show you this boomer video before I leave. All right, and we can continue our discussion because I have a lot of other articles that I put in the description, and we'll go into it maybe tomorrow night. All right, and I can talk to you when the whole shebang starts kicking up when futures market opens.
Good afternoon. I'm still reporting on the importance of the celebration of Purim. The parallels between the mullah's despotic 47-year rule over Iran and the biblical story of Purim are hard to ignore. Purim begins this year at sundown on March 2nd, 2026, and lasts through March 3rd. It marks the Jewish people's escape from genocide in ancient Persia, as told in the book of Esther. In the story, King Ahasuerus ruled the vast Persian Empire. After banishing Queen Vashti around 478 BC, he married Esther, a Jewish woman who hid her identity. The king's advisor, Haman, rises to power and demands everyone bow to him. Esther's cousin Mordecai refuses. Furious, Haman plots to kill all Jews in the empire. He casts lots to pick a date for the massacre around the 1st of March in 474 BC and convinces the king to issue an irrevocable decree. Mordecai urges Esther to approach the king uninvited to plead for her people, a risky move that could mean death. When she hesitates, Mordecai replies with powerful words. Do not think that because you are in the king's palace, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arrive for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Esther fasts for 3 days, trying to decide what she will do. No one has approached the king before and asked him to undo an irrevocable decree. Finally, she breaks her fast on the 13th of Adar, the day before Purim. And risking everything, she goes to the king and reveals her Jewish identity, exposes Haman's plot to slaughter all the Jews, and begs for mercy for her people, and succeeds. Haman is executed, and the Jews are saved and no longer must flee their homes in Persia. This is what is celebrated today on Purim. So, to Jews, today's events feel strikingly similar. In ancient Persia, Jews faced annihilation with no visible help inside the palace. Yet Esther was there for a reason. In today's world, the U.S. and Israel attacked the headquarters of the mullah's regime and killed the 3 most important figures. 3 days later will be Purim. Will it be a day of relaxation as the Jews see the last vestiges of the last 47 years of tyrannical rule of the mullahs finally disappear? Back then, the Jews felt alone against Haman's decree. But unlike ancient times, Jews now have a sovereign state with unmatched strength and resolve of President Donald Trump. They are no longer helpless subjects waiting for rescue. Purim teaches that history can shift unexpectedly. What seems inevitable often isn't. Courage, unseen preparations, and steadfast resolve can change everything.
Alrighty there. Alrighty, guys. Have fun with that message. Maybe on Purim. So starting Monday night. So that's when the day starts. If you follow Jewish calendar, it's always sunset. So I'll read. I'll have a special stream where I just read the Book of Esther. Which translation is your favorite? I probably just do King James. I'm just gonna do King James. I don't like the other translations, so I'll read the whole thing. It should just take about 30 minutes. Just for the hell of it. Since people like to read the Bible nowadays in the Void, why don't I join and start reading that stuff too? Okay, so remember, guys. Look at where the ships are at. Look at where we are. The other thing interesting about the Book of Esther is also it's one of the books in the Torah that doesn't mention God directly. So it's kind of like, it's sort of like, I don't know what to say. Like, it sort of implies that, humans have some control of their destinies, or that like a single person can change the course of history, right? Kind of like that type of thing. So, but we're not gonna get into that. Otherwise, I'm just gonna talk about the Hare Krishnas and all of those guys who believe that, like, the overlord or over creator of the Brahman energy or some shit flows through you and you work according to that. But yeah, just remember this picture here. We still have the Gerald Ford off the coast of Israel. I don't know if they still have poop problems in their toilets, but if that gets fixed, they'll cross the Suez and reach to the Strait of Hormuz, and we'll have some real fun times right next week. I heard that Uncle H has obsessed with the Torah of Purim. Uncle H, eh? Interesting, interesting. Yes, to you, Jewel. All right, see you guys.